Welcome back to Reshape Your Life. I'm your host, Jason Atkinson, and today I'm going to be sharing with you some tips and strategies from my new upcoming book that I'm working on, Cheat to Win: Harnessing the Power of Dietary Refeeds to Get Lean Without the Struggle. Now, a lot of you who are listening may have been hesitant to try to lose weight up until now because you think or you believe that it's a lot more difficult than it actually is. People think that workouts have to be extremely difficult, and they think that they're hesitant to do that, and they're hesitant to diet or do any type of diet because they think they're going to have to give up their favorite foods, and neither of these statements are true. When it comes to the workouts, I've discovered that slow and low is the way to go. I will elaborate on that a little bit as the video goes on. And when it comes to your dietary restrictions, you can kind of have your cake and eat it too. But it is going to require a few shifts in thinking based or relative to what you may have been believing up until now. The first major shift that we need to make is to go from thinking that success in weight loss, or really in any endeavor, has to be dependent on a 100% all or nothing mindset, and that's just absolutely not true. You may have heard of the concept of the 80-20 rule. What you do 80% of the time is what dictates your 20% of your results, or 20% of your efforts come from 80% of your, 20% of your results come from 80% of your efforts, and vice versa. So it's what you do 80% of the time that really matters, and the other 20% not so much. This is known as the Pareto principle, or Pareto principle, by the way. And Pareto was just a philosopher who discovered this, what he called the 80-20 rule, 80% of the time. So instead of thinking all or nothing, which I always caution people against all or nothing thinking, because no one's perfect, and you don't have to be. But when you go into something with this perfection mindset, as soon as you slip up, as soon as you deviate, you think, oh, I failed, I knew I couldn't do it, and you just quit and go back to what you were doing before. I hear people say things like, I have to start over again. And I blame some of this on cultural phenomenons like, for example, the 75 hard challenge. You may have heard of that. 75 days in a row, and there's several things you have to do. It's not really a wellness plan, it's a mental toughness plan. And on this 75 hard, if you miss one of those 5 things, you have to start over. So that whole pass or fail, absolute perfection mindset is just not valid, and I think that stops a lot of people from even trying. One of my major principles or strategies that I work with is the idea of the refeed. And I mentioned that in the book title because I prefer refeed to cheat day, although Cheat to Win, that's the title. People know what a cheat day is, they know what a cheat meal is, they may not know what a refeed is. Refeed's a little more technical, but your refeed meal can be a cheat meal. It doesn't necessarily have to be. Let me define my terms. Refeed, okay, if you are on a weight loss diet, you're on a caloric restriction of some type, where you're attempting to eat less energy and expend more energy, so you create a deficit and can burn body fat to make up the difference. The first shift you have to make is looking at it as a relative deficit and not an absolute calorie deficit. So what that means is you could be in a deficit for 5 days a week and be in a surplus for 2 days a week, and you still have a 3-day net deficit. So you don't always have to be in a calorie deficit, energy deficit. Most people approach it with that mindset. I burn this many calories, I'm going to eat this many calories, so I'm going to burn this much body fat, and I'm just going to do that every day from now on until I hate my life and I can't do it anymore, and then I'm going to quit. Okay. My Reshape diet is based on real world results, starting with my own. I lost 75 pounds of body fat. I've maintained a new healthy weight for over 10 years. I have helped dozens of people in person, hundreds of people through my other endeavors as far as online and so forth, customer interactions and client interactions over the years, I've helped hundreds of people to achieve similar results through training, nutrition, and targeted supplementation. Those are the three pillars of the Reshape program. And I'm famous for saying you can eat whatever you want, you just can't do it whenever you want. So that all or nothing mindset has to go, because absolute perfection is not a requirement. Nobody's perfect. You don't have to be. But let's just look at some of how this calorie math myth got started. First of all, if you are completely sedentary, if you're not doing any type of activity or exercise, and you look up your supposed BMR, which is your basal metabolic rate, that's the amount of energy or calories that your body burns at rest. If you look that up and you you just eat that amount, okay, theoretically, if you're burning this much at rest and you're eating that amount, any exercise you do would create a deficit. So if you exercise for about an hour a day, say 30 minutes of cardio, 30 minutes of weight training, or a little bit of both, that's going to cause you to burn an additional roughly 500 calories per day. If you know the math, supposedly 3,500 calories is a pound of body fat. So if you're in a deficit for 500 calories per day, you burn about a pound of body fat a week. If you consciously reduce your food intake, let's just say you reduce 125 grams of carbohydrate from what you've been doing, that's another 500 calorie drop. So now you have about 1,000 calorie deficit between what you're burning and what you're taking in. You cannot sustain a 1,000 calorie deficit long term. Your body knows that if you continue to do that, eventually you'll starve to death. But in the short term, the first week, that's a 7,000 calorie deficit. You're going to burn 2 pounds of body fat. On my coaching plan, 1% of your body weight per week is completely reasonable. You can do that without losing muscle, especially if you have more body fat. The leaner you get, the harder it gets to hold on to muscle and to continue to burn body fat because of some compensation that happens, and that's part of what I'm getting at here. That 1,000 calorie deficit will not continue long term because you lose size, you lose some muscle, your energy needs go down, and now you're only in a 500 calorie deficit. So part of the science behind the refeed is to help keep that from happening. Let's say you did your 1,000 calorie deficit for 5 days, and then you did a moderate surplus or just eat at maintenance for a couple of days. Well, what that does is it proves to your body that you're not starving. So the hormones that dictate appetite and energy regulation, that release fat stores, specifically leptin and ghrelin. Leptin is your fullness hormone, ghrelin is your hunger hormone. When you're in a severe calorie deficit or a long-term calorie deficit, your body senses that you're potentially going to starve. It will lower the output of those hormones. So you're going to be hungrier and you're going to have less energy. You're not going to feel like doing much. Your body will compensate in any way that it can to slow you down, dump some muscle, especially if you're not using it. These are all compensation mechanisms. So the real rationale behind the refeed is I'm in a deficit for 1,250 calories per day, 1,500 calories per day for 3 or 4 days, and then I'm at maintenance or surplus for a couple of days. So now you've got a steep drop in calories and a steep increase in calories. And if you do this the right way, the way I'm teaching, create your deficit primarily from carbohydrate, meaning your very low carbohydrate ketogenic levels, 25 grams of carbs or less per day for most people. You do that for about 5 days, you're going to create space in the muscle tissue to store incoming carbohydrate in the form of glycogen. So it doesn't automatically get converted into body fat. You've got room for it. If you build some muscle, you're going to have more storage space. This is all in my 3 points to improve your insulin sensitivity. If you want to go look up that video, or I'll link it below so you can watch that. Okay, you create some space in the muscle by building a little more muscle. You burn up some of the glycogen through the activity. required by training, and then you do a very low carbohydrate and maybe even some intermittent fasting in the more advanced stages. All of that depletes glycogen. So now when you refeed, you get your extra 125 grams of carbs per day that you gave up. You can have some of that back in a big meal or two on the weekends, and it's actually beneficial. It improves the hormones with appetite regulation and energy. It refills the glycogen, which is your fuel source that you use for weight training. And so we do need some glycogen or glucose. We don't have to eat carbohydrate to get it, but that's the easiest way to get it. And that's really the problem when it comes to obesity in America. You know, the high protein aspect of this diet and the low carbohydrate aspect of this diet, those are designed to keep you feeling full so that you don't overeat. When your protein is adequate, your energy is automatically going to be lower because you're not going to be as hungry. And it really and truly doesn't matter if that energy is coming from fat, dietary fat, or carbohydrate. The lower carbohydrate part of it, I feel like that's beneficial because it helps keep you in the calorie deficit long enough to actually get results from it. If you've ever tried a low-fat diet and you have cravings all the time, now, this is what happened to me. It's my personal experience. I tried just counting calories. I tried just measuring and limiting portions. You can get some progress by doing that, but it's always a struggle. So what I'm promising in Cheat to Win is learn how to hack the system, learn from my mistakes, from my own personal experience and all my client interactions. Don't repeat my mistakes. Learn from them. Okay, that's all for today. I'm going to go ahead and close this video, and I'll have more in the near future. So until next time, stay strong and enjoy the journey.